podcast. My name is Amelia.
My name is Sherrick, and this is Amelia.
And Sherrick, what are you doing?
The podcast where you ask what we are doing, and then we tell you because we love you. I'm just going to keep going until I can find something to land on.
Usually what we're doing is random and weird, but that's who we are as people. So yeah, let's
very much so.
Start with how was your week, Sherrick? What have you been up to?
So more Animal Crossing. The game hasn't changed. It's still the same. I am technically through the quote unquote main part of the story. Which is like a weird thing to say for an Animal Crossing game, because mostly it's like, here, you live here now, you catch fish and bugs and pay off these loans. I haven't finished all of those, but like there's an actual like mini storyline in the game that I won't spoil for people who are either considering playing it or in the midst of playing it. But I have just finally gotten through that storyline, and now I'm able to kind of just more or less do what I want, which was following the storyline, but now it's like, I'll just figure out a way to continue making my island beautiful. Once I can figure out how to get my screenshots off my Switch and into the internet, I will start showing like progress pics, and I'll start from the beginning so that people aren't like, oh, weird, this makes no sense out of context. But mostly that. And also just lamenting that baseball technically would have started by now, and it has not, because of course we are all quarantined.
Yep.
So a person that I know named Matt Zembrowski made a song that we will link in the description called "Today Would Have Been Opening Day," and it's quite good, and I think you'll enjoy it even if you are not a Brewers fan. If you are a fan of baseball, I think you will like it. So
yeah,
that's my week.
I have quite a few friends who are baseball fans, and all very sad that opening day came and went without any actual baseball. So I'm very sorry for everyone's loss.
It is a temporary loss. We will get it back. I've actually considered maybe like just like simming through the games because I own MLB 20 The Show, which is the Sony PlayStation game that allows you to simulate and play baseball, and I might do that on Twitch.
Yeah.
Maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah.
So yeah, how was your week, Amelia?
It was all right. Yeah, I don't feel like I have a whole lot to report other than just more working from home. But me and so many people around at least the country, if not the world, have been taken over by Netflix's Tiger King. Yeah, I don't want to say too much because, like, everybody should watch it. It is insane, and it is a turn at every moment. You think it can't get any crazier, and then it does. And I know that's what everybody is saying about it. I don't know what else to say about it other than everybody is insane in that show, and I'm shocked that these are all real people, but I'm also really not surprised that these are all real people. So, yeah, if you've watched it, hit me up. Let me know what you thought. It's just crazy. And it was a very good distraction during a very weird time. So bless you, Netflix, for giving us insanity. Other than that, I've been like, video chatting with people and watching a lot of TV and kind of doing pretty normal stuff, just leaving the house less. Not a lot less, just less.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my week, I guess.
I think I I got in my car and went someplace for the first time in a week, and that was like I was just like, oh, okay, I'm actually putting shoes on and like going someplace because
Mm-hmm.
there's no real need for us to like wear shoes in the house. So like
Right.
I was just like, oh, I'm actually putting on shoes and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
we just had to like go in and like run someplace and run back. It was just like an in and out kind of thing, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like a little appalled at how many people were on the road, but
I
you know,
know. I know. I've
I don't even.
been trying to take walks. I've only
Hmm.
succeeded a couple of times, but it was super nice here yesterday. It was like 60 degrees and sunny. Now it is 40 and raining, but welcome to the Midwest. Um,
Yeah.
but I was like, I need to take advantage of the fact that it's 60 and sunny. Like, not even just because I've been inside for days and quarantined for days, but just because it's 60 and sunny in March. Like, that's
Hmm.
it happens, but it's
Wild.
usually like this where it's like a day. And
Hmm.
so I went for about a half an hour walk, and I was just amazed at how many people were on the road. I was not that shocked at how many people I saw like walking their dogs or out in their yards, or because again, it was a really nice day. And it had
Hmm.
been the first really nice day this year, I would say. Um, and so yeah, I was not surprised that people were outside, because outside is a pretty easy thing to do and stay away from people. But I was
Yeah.
amazed at how many people were on the road. But at the same time, I mean, there's still a lot of people that are going to work. Um, people that work in stores and medical professionals and
Hmm.
post people,
Yeah.
and so and I live in a rather lower economic area, so I'm not surprised that a lot of those people don't have paid sick leave, um,
Hmm.
or jobs that they can do from home. Not to like stereotype or make that a blanket statement, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them. But yeah, I know I kind of just wanted to be like, where are you going? Why?
Why are you leaving? Just stay
Just
home,
stay home.
please,
But
so we can get through this.
right. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I just saw
yeah.
this meme or this like tweet or something that was like, this is like the world's like a group project. That there's like the people doing the work and doing it well and doing what they're supposed to do, and then there's those assholes that like don't contribute to the group project, and we're being graded on this together, you guys. Like, get your shit together, because this affects
You guys, the
everybody.
quarantine exam is in like 2 weeks. We're screwed if you don't help.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I loved it. I have enjoyed a lot of the memes and jokes coming out of this, even though it's,
Hmm.
it's maybe nothing to
Oh,
joke about, but it's also levity is nice. So,
yes, I was gonna say like people choosing to use humor and
yeah.
levity to cope
Yeah.
with the awfulness of the situation. So I always kind of take it with that grain of salt of being like, well,
Yeah.
like under normal circumstances, I wouldn't appreciate you joking about this, but I also understand that this could be very well your way of not like
Yeah.
jumping, you know, up into the sky and just like falling to the ground, screaming and crying.
Mhm.
Like, so
Yep.
if that's what it takes, great.
Yep. Yep. I always want to choose laughter over crying. So,
Hmm.
sometimes those are your only choices. Um, but yeah, so
Speaking of,
speaking of humor, look at how I set that
uh,
up.
yeah, our topic this week, we chose to talk about sitcoms because it's one of the one. It's like we haven't really covered TV all that much. Like we hit reality TV a couple of weeks back, but like mostly we've been into like music and movies, and with a little sprinkle of gaming here. So we thought we'd kind of boomerang back to television. And so initially we were gonna do top five, bottom five sitcoms of the 2000s, by which I believe we cut it to, I want to say beginning. They had to start in 2001. And
Hmm.
did you say they ended in 2009 or
Yeah.
2010?
So they had,
I couldn't.
to me, how I was thinking about this, and we didn't necessarily talk about it too much, but was like the show
Mm-hmm.
had to start between 2001 and 2010 because decades start on a 1 and end on a 0.
Mm-hmm.
People who get that wrong all the fucking time. Um, and but I also like tried to make sure that most of the show took place in that time period. So
Mm-hmm.
like there were a couple of shows that I like as I was going through lists of shows to think of them that started in like 2008 or 9. And I was just like, okay, that technically counts, but most of the show happened in the 2010s, so I didn't want to count
Mm-hmm.
those. Um,
That's
so
fair.
yeah, so that's what I tried to do is pick shows that were mostly in 2001 to 2010. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so
But then we basically decided that bottom 5 would be kind of ridiculous because if a show was bad, we didn't really watch it.
right.
I had a couple of ideas of shows that I thought were bad off premise alone, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really want to
Mm-hmm.
shit on people's. I want to yuck people's yums without really knowing about it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
there is one that I will mention though that like. Please let me know if you liked this show. I want to hear why you liked it. It was a show called 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter, and I was like, what?
Yep. I actually did
uh,
watch not a lot of that show, but I watched episodes here and there, and the
mm-hmm.
title was bad. Um,
I want to say it was based off a
it
book. I feel like
was,
it
yeah,
was like
and
it
I
was
think the
okay.
book was less fictional and more not necessarily a rule book. I think it was supposed to be humorous, um,
Mm-hmm.
like a dad's humorous take on having teenage daughters. But yeah, I remember the show being pretty good, and that if they had stuck really hard to that premise from the title, I think it would have been really bad. But because it was
Mm-hmm.
basically just a like, this is gonna be,
Slice of life
yeah, I
more.
mean, it just was your typical
Okay.
kind of family sitcom, I would say. Um,
Okay.
and that the they had 2 teenage daughters and a younger son. Um, so a lot of the plot revolved around the teenage daughters, I would say, but like that's not that weird for like a family sitcom, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that wasn't a great title though.
Yeah, I just kind of saw that and I was just like, ooh,
Yeah,
I don't know. That just seems like something that was totally in the past, but
yeah,
um, it is what it
right.
is. Anyway, but yeah, so we axed the idea. I mean, long story short, we axed the idea of doing bottom 5 because again, didn't really want to yuck people's yums. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of shows that I was just like, I probably like watched a couple of episodes and like, this is bad, but
Mm-hmm.
sitcoms are such that like sometimes you have to stick it out,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
and like you get there by finding the gem in the dirt, so to speak.
Yeah,
And I was like, we should probably just stick to the ones that we like, and then people can tell us about the ones that they like as
right.
well. But, and I did also remark to Amelia, like, this is the era, and I wanted to pick this number 1 to stay away from the 90s because we were totally all over the 90s. So for the people who have been waiting for us to talk about something that did not occur in the 90s, this is the episode. This is the very first episode in which we will do that. I wanted to correct myself there because we will definitely stay away from the 90s more often. But
We will not stay away
I,
entirely.
no, not entirely. We'll go back to it, we promise. But like, we wanted to make sure that this is the first episode that we strictly hit, that it doesn't talk about the 90s other than me mentioning it now. And then number 2, this is kind of the era in which I like started to drift away from TV, especially because like we didn't really have cable when I was in college, and so like my entertainment, like, and that was like, and we're talking about like Netflix was mostly sending you DVDs in the
Mm-hmm.
mail at
Mm-hmm.
this point, so like it wasn't really a streaming service until like tail end of college, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me. And that was like its very very infant stages of its streaming service, so there wasn't really a whole lot on there.
Right.
That was mostly movies, not really television.
Mm-hmm.
So like my entertainment from about like 2016, no, 2006 to about 2009 was, watching my friends play video games and shit like that. So
Mm-hmm.
like TV wasn't really my bag.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so my my list starts off strong, but who boy does
No,
it
I
peter
like
out.
your list. But before we get to that, I just
Hmm.
want to say that like when Cher came to me with this idea, I was so super excited because A, TV is my life. And I I don't necessarily have a favorite genre, I guess. So like I don't feel like I can be like, "Oh my God, I love sitcoms so much." I mean, I do, but I also love
Hmm.
drama and reality and so many things. But one thing about sitcoms for me is that I really love comedy, but I really, especially as I've gotten older, have a harder time with sitcoms that are very episodic. Um,
Hmm.
so like just jokes are there to get laughs and they're not really there to serve any purpose other than that. Or like that
Okay.
sort of forget their past or um like character traits don't really carry over all the time. Um,
You want continuity,
yeah, I
basically.
want continuity. And so, like, I think for me, some of the best sitcoms are like, um, make, finding the humor in everyday life rather than forcing the humor, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, so I would say, like, that is one reason why, uh, the first show that we wanted to talk about that ended up on both of our lists is
Hmm.
How I Met Your Mother. Because for me,
Yes.
one reason I really loved that show is because, yes, it was really funny, but it also had a lot of heart and it had a lot of serious moments. And there was
Hmm.
definitely a trajectory and story arcs within it. And I need that to keep watching because if I'm just like, okay, that joke doesn't
Yeah.
even make sense. It's just stupid and funny or whatever, like
Hmm.
because of this character trait that we've learned in a different episode or because of this thing or you know
Hmm.
yeah, like that's what I don't like about sitcoms, I guess, is when they get to
Yes.
be like that. But anyway.
Right. So to start off with, I before we started recording was like we should definitely get the mother into the room so we can get her out of the
Uh-huh.
room, because it's the only one that
Yep.
overlaps, on our list, I
Yes.
believe. And also, like, I think it's probably the one that I think I don't I don't know. I'm going to say this and it's going to be wrong, but it's like I feel like that was the one that had the most impact on both of us, I guess, as far as sitcoms go. Um, Definitely me, if not you.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of like that. Like I said, they were when Netflix was a thing. This is how I consumed How I Met Your Mother was via
Mm-hmm.
Netflix. They had them on DVD, and I was like just going through it because I didn't really get into it until like
Yeah.
you know like I want to say closer to the end of 2010s. So I missed, the first like couple of seasons, and so I
Mm-hmm.
was just going back on
Mm-hmm.
DVD and watching it, and I was just like
Mm-hmm.
hooked because it was funny, but they were telling a
Yep.
story about these people's
Yep.
lives. Um, and I just recall just being like, well, my whole day has been gone because I
Yep.
watched 12 episodes. I watched a whole season of How I
Yep.
Met Your Mother. But let's talk about like the premise before we get into our own things, just in case there's somebody out there that's listening that hasn't
Mm-hmm.
watched it. Um, so the idea is that you have this main character, and I'm using the word main loosely around this particular series because I mean he was the main character, so to speak, but like not
Mm-hmm.
really, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. His name's Ted Mosby, and it's told he's talking and he's voiced by Bob Saget in the future for some reason.
Which is just hilarious, but I love it.
I want to say it's the year
I
2030.
think
I
that's
think
right, yeah.
is what he's telling this story to his two, like I want to say they were younger kids,
They're like
like
preteen,
maybe
teenage. I want to
teenage.
say like
Yeah,
14, 15, something like that. Yeah.
right. Um, which I love the fact that they literally like shot their shit like when they were like at the big towards the
Uh-huh.
beginning, so that they didn't really look. So it didn't really look. They obviously aged because this show ran like almost 10
Yep.
years. And I can't remember the names of the actor and actress that play his
Mm-hmm.
children. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Ted Mosby is telling this story to his kids about how he met their mother. And you would think that it'd be like, oh, like this thing, but they actually just like tell, it's really about Ted and his group of
Yeah.
friends. It's
Yeah.
not so much about the mother.
Right.
And like they do get back to it here and
Mm-hmm.
there, and we can talk about how that goes off the rails
Mm-hmm.
later, but like it's a bit of a misnomer to call him the main character because it's about him and his
Yeah.
friends and their adventures living in New York, around,
Mm-hmm.
like after the millennium.
Yeah.
So it is very. It doesn't. I mean, there's some episodic
Oh
elements
yeah.
to it, but there are bits that come back, and you're just like, oh, I thought that was a throwaway gag. Nope,
Mm-hmm.
they're fucking
Mm-hmm.
like they're referencing it
Mm-hmm.
again. Like it's like you would with your actual friends. Like
Mm-hmm.
like hey, remember that one time that Todd jumped in the river because he thought his wallet was in there? That was
Right.
hilarious. Like it comes
Yeah.
back.
That was one thing I loved about that
You
show
know.
is the way that gags and jokes and things would come back.
Mm-hmm. And they would like find ways to string you along, like Neil Patrick Harris, who I would argue both him and Allison Hannigan had a bit of a career renaissance
Oh
with this
yeah.
show, because they were popular for other stuff, but like it seemed like they kind of were just like fading into the ether, and then this show
Mm-hmm.
like premiered, and then they had like steady work for so long, and now they're like,
Mm-hmm.
at least Neil is doing
Yeah.
tons of shit. I can't really speak for Allison because I don't really follow her career
Mm-hmm.
that way, but they had a running gag where like they would talk about not knowing about what their friend Barney, played by Neil Patrick Harris, actually did for
Mm-hmm.
work, and he would just go, ha, please, and then he wouldn't answer the
Yep.
question.
Yep.
So
and then you find out at the at the very end that he was answering the question, but I don't even remember like how that all turned out. I just remember that like that was the answer somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean there were lots of like really stupid gags, but they were hilarious, and they would come back, and they were always like a inside joke with this friend group and stuff, and so.
I'm looking at you, Slapsgiving.
Yes, Slapsgiving. Oh my goodness. But yeah, and to me, like, I argue a little bit with the idea that it's a misnomer because yes, if you're gonna tell a story to your children about how you met their mother, it's probably not gonna be that long of a story. And you're not gonna tell 9 years of your fucking life. But they always kind of poke fun at him for doing that. Like, can we get to the fucking point? But it starts with his two best friends getting engaged and him being like, I want that. And so it's sort of his journey of like trying to find his wife. And it does go back and forth, and there are times when he's less adamant about it and more times when he's more obsessed with it. But that felt really real to me. Because I also, I think, watched the first 3 seasons like from Netflix or from somehow. So I didn't get into it until closer to the end of the decade, but yeah, I remember thinking like this is Friends for the next generation, kind of. That like I always had loved Friends, but like was always, I mean, I was a high school senior when that show ended, so I was never that age. Whereas like when I started to watch How I Met Your Mother, I was in my 20s. I was in my like mid 20s, which is what they were supposed to be when it started. So
so you kind of felt that.
I kind of felt that like connection. And yeah, like I said, I think like it's really funny and full of stupid stuff, but it also had a lot of heart to it, and there were a lot of like really heartbreaking moments in it.
And a lot of frustrating moments.
Yeah. But I also
I'll just want to quick slide in here real quick. I think from this point on, if you have not watched How I Met Your Mother, you've been warned. We will probably dip into some spoilers, and that's probably true for all of
Yes.
these shows. But we'll try and kind of like pipe up and be like, all right, from this point on, we're gonna start talking about spoilers for
Yeah.
the show. So if you wanted to fucking start watching How I Met Your Mother because we've talked about it at this point, stop the episode, go watch it, and then you can
Yeah.
come back because from here on in, I think we're gonna. I just think it. If we talk about these shows that we love and we just like dance around them without
Oh,
talking about
yeah.
like specific things, that like it will be
Right. And
ridiculous.
it's
So yeah, you've been warned.
really
Spoiler
hard to
warning.
talk about How I Met Your Mother without talking about the elephant in the room, which is the ending.
Yes,
Um
the mother in the room.
that for me, okay, so there's a couple of shows that end in very controversial ways that people just hate. And this is one of
Mm-hmm.
those.
Gonna casually glance over at that Game of Thrones poster. Okay, bye. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have a Game of Thrones
Yeah.
poster in my room or in my house, but that's
To
neither
me,
here
the
nor
two big ones are this and Lost. But anyway, that's not a sitcom. So,
there. Oop. All right. We'll
yeah, we'll
touch that
touch
another
that
day,
another
maybe.
day. I would love to talk about that. But for me, and if a bad ending ruins a whole thing for you, like that's fine. Like you do you. But for me, I enjoyed so much of it up to that point that like even the
Mm-hmm.
ending being not what I wanted didn't make me just go, well, the whole show was a waste. Or
Mm-hmm.
now I can't watch it without like knowing how it ends. And I get why people don't like the ending. I didn't love the ending. Um I I thought that having him end up with Robin in the end was just like, we've done this, we've been here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
when they did date in the beginning, you could tell it was like, we need to get this out of our system. Like, we both really like each other, but we both want very different things out of our lives. And yes, I
Mm-hmm.
understand this idea that they get together in the end after his wife has died and after he's had kids and they're older, and so they don't have those
Mm-hmm.
same, like, they've both done the things in their lives that they wanted to do.
So now they can like have an excuse to be together,
Kind of.
kind of a
And
thing.
I think if these were real people and they weren't being telling this story through this lens of How I Met Your Mother, it wouldn't have been so
Mm-hmm.
awful because, like, guess what? People's partners do die and they do move on. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think
Yes.
that, like, if this was a real set of people that I knew, I would be this upset about it. But I think it's because the whole premise of the show is telling these kids about how he met their mother. Then you meet the mother, you get to know her a little bit, um,
Mm-hmm.
and enough to see how well they are together. And so then for her to
Right.
die
And
and then end up with Robin, it was like, well, what the fuck, man? So
mm-hmm.
I think it almost
100%.
would have been better to like have them meet. It like if you were gonna do that, then like we shouldn't have.
Have them meet way earlier.
Then yeah, we needed to meet her way earlier, or we needed to barely meet her. But then also people would have thought
Yeah.
like that's really callous.
Mm-hmm.
So because they already did feel that way. And so there was some truth in storytelling there that I did like, that like here's this guy who this is what he wants out of life, is to be married and have kids, and that it took him a lot to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't that those aren't necessarily the things that I want out of my life, but I definitely understand that like struggle journey kind of thing. And so I appreciated that. And then for her to die, like that's real. Like that's real. That
Yeah.
can happen. That does happen.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily hate that. And again, but I think what bothered me the most about it is that I think they spent so much time throughout the 9 years of the show telling us why those two people were wrong for each other. And it wasn't just
Yes.
because they wanted
Yes.
different things
100%.
out of their lives, so that, like, oh, if they're older and have done those things, they can now be together. They just
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again showed how they were wrong for each other and put them with different
Yeah.
people. And I mean, I understand why there's the argument that Robin and Barney weren't necessarily the best couple in the world either, but I loved them, first of all. And second of all,
I love them
we
together too.
spent a
Yeah.
whole fucking season on the weekend of their wedding, and then in 5 minutes of the finale find out that they got divorced.
It felt very
It
rushed at the
felt
end, and I'm
so
100%
rushed.
agreeing
Like,
with you at the end.
especially,
It
yeah.
was like they
Go ahead.
sorry, it was like they had the plan that like Ted and Robin were gonna get together at the end, and then they were like, okay, well, this is where we can cut it off, and then like it kept getting renewed and like more in episodes, and then we need to do more, and then they were like, no, we're fucking cutting it off, like we're done, and
right.
So that when we got to the end, it was like the whole big deal was like you meet Ted's wife, I almost said Ted's mother, Ted's wife. You fall in love with her because she's a fucking gorgeous person and she's perfect for Ted, at least as far as you and I are concerned. And then they're just like, and they don't do it like this, but this is how it felt. And they were like, oh yeah, it's they're perfect together. It's a real shame that she had to die anyway. So that's how I ended up with your Aunt Robin now being my new wife, because that's this is what we planned for the whole time. Oh, by the way, that whole thing that big deal about Barney and Robin getting married after both of them didn't really want to. Yeah, don't worry about it. They're fine.
Well,
and not only do they get divorced, but they're fucking fine with the fact.
Right. Well, and like they first get together in season 3, so it's not even like a thing towards the end. It's like they're together.
Mm-hmm.
Their up and downs with each other are much more than Ted and Robin have. Like, they're together and not together, and like it goes back and forth for a while, and then again, you spend the whole last season of the show on this like 3-day period of time, and then the last episode of the show is like a 20-year period of time, and it's just like, I'm okay with shows playing with time, but that's like so much. That's so much. And so I just, I hate that. But have you seen the recut of the ending?
I might have, but I don't remember.
So they recut the ending. I don't know if they intended to do this from the beginning or if they did it because people were so outraged. I don't know. But they recut it so that she doesn't die and he doesn't end up with Robin. Robin and Barney.
Yeah, I don't think I knew about that.
Robin and Barney still get divorced. It's like basically the scene at the end, which I don't remember the finale that well, but I know I've seen this clip a couple of times, where it's like the scene where Ted and Tracy are getting married, is where they do the voiceover at the end about like, if I had never done this and I've never done that, I wouldn't have gotten here and I wouldn't have gotten to this, and then I wouldn't have met this person, and then I wouldn't have met your mother and like had you guys and stuff. And it's really beautiful, and that's the end. And that
much appreciate that more than what we got.
So I will link that in the description too, because it's really good and I like it so much that I just sort of pretend like that's how it ends.
Is that official, or was that like
no?
A fan
it's
thing?
Like on the DVDs, like it's a director's cut. Yeah, so it's official. Like I said, cool. I don't know if it was like as a result of outrage or if they had planned that, knowing that people would think it was controversial, or just saying like, we feel like it could go either way. I don't know, but I like it really. I like it a lot.
Well, they handled it better than a certain video game series that spanned three games that the ending was awful, and then they went, oh no wait, here's the better ending, and then we went, it's not better, and they were like, well, we're owned by EA now, so fuck you, bye.
Yeah. So in the the director's cut of the ending, or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
yeah, like I said, Barney and Robin have still gotten divorced, but there's this like moment where they look at each other at the wedding, and so you feel like,
Hmm.
okay, maybe they got divorced because of life circumstances, and like they just, because it was very clear that like Robin had this life where she was going all around the globe, and Barney was having trouble with that or whatever, which again is like a real
Hmm.
life thing, and I
Yes.
get it. And so now that she's like stopped doing that and settled down a little bit, like maybe they could get back together and whatever. But
Right.
um,
But
yeah.
we could probably
Oh
talk way
yeah,
more
for
about it,
sure.
but we should
I just
probably
want
move
to
on.
add one fun fact. One fun fact about
Yes.
myself in this show. This is
Hmm.
my current uh personal best in uh number of episodes watched in a row. I have
Oh,
watched 27
really?
episodes of How I Met Your Mother in a row.
Girl, I think my personal best is I watched 7 episodes of Law and Order SVU in a
Okay.
row,
Okay.
and those are, if I recall correctly, an
Yes.
hour. So, like,
Yes.
um, quick anecdote. Um, I did when we had Netflix. They did have Law and Order SVUs like 10 plus seasons. So I was like, I'm gonna watch every episode of SVU until there are no more episodes of
Mm-hmm.
SVU on Netflix. And so I would come home from class and just sit down and
Yup.
just like either do my homework or whatever, but I would be watching SVU. And yeah, just shy of 7 hours,
Yep.
y'all, but yeah, still couldn't do
Yep.
more than that.
Yeah, that is
So
my. I have multiple TV marathoning
that's
records, but
impressive.
yes, most seasons of How I Met Your Mother was about 22 episodes, I think. I watched a whole season and started a new one.
That's
Yep.
amazing. Super
Yep.
amazing.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
all
not
right.
and that wasn't the first time through.
So,
That was like a rewatch, so I was doing other things during it,
mhm.
but
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not setting
no, no,
Guinness
no.
records here, so it's not like I was
No,
expecting
no,
you to
no.
have
But that's
like
a personal best. So, um,
hmm.
yeah.
Impressive, impressive.
So, moving
Um,
on.
yeah, I actually want to pick one off your list because I want you to tell
Okay.
me about it. I want you to tell me about
Okay.
Corner Gas because I had never
Yes.
heard of this
Okay.
show.
So,
It is
I
straight up
included
new to
two
me.
shows on my list that are not made in America, um,
Okay.
because I thought that was interesting. And one being the IT Crowd, which is a British show, but a lot of people have heard of it
Hmm.
here. And the
Yeah,
other
I had
one
heard of
being a
it.
show called Corner Gas that is Canadian and is their
Okay.
longest running sitcom, which is
Oh,
kind of
okay.
sad because it's only like 5 years. But anyway, I believe that's
Yeah.
right. But it was on Amazon. I don't know if it still is, but my parents found it and told me to watch it, and I watched it, and it's just goofy. It's just like it's about a small town in Saskatchewan, and a guy who works at this gas station called Corner Gas because
Hmm.
it's like at the main intersection. And it's attached to a little diner, and so it's about him and the woman who runs the diner and a couple of their friends and his parents. It's just like a very generic sitcom. But it's really funny and really goofy and very Canadian, and it's just sweet. It's a good, like, I don't know, just nice thing to watch. As you can imagine, a lot of Canadian stuff would be just very like sweet and not too not too thinky. Just very good distraction, I guess. Um, yeah, I'm trying to
Okay.
think of like how else to describe it, but um, yeah, I don't know. It's just cute.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I might have to check it out because It just that I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of that
Mm-hmm.
show. I was like, what
Yeah,
it
I
is
started
though.
watching it and it just was so funny and so just ridiculous, but also so boring and normal that I immediately was hooked and I watched it really fast.
That's like a show that was really popular, I think, when I was in college, and I think it's kind of like I got a cult following, and it's called Trailer Park
Mm-hmm.
Boys. That I was just like, I don't really know if I get it, but that was also like when I was phasing out of my
Yeah.
TV watching, so that's probably
Mm-hmm.
why I didn't get
Yeah,
it.
I've heard of that show, but I don't know much about
So,
it. So yes, and then just to briefly say, I also mentioned that I have a IT Crowd on my list, which was also a very short-lived show, as a lot of British shows are. They did do a movie a few years later, but the main show being 2006 to 2010, and it is just fucking brilliant. Anybody who's ever worked in IT or knows anything about IT, I don't have any training in IT, but I have had to be like the um, token millennial who's supposed to know how to
hey, what up?
use technology in every place I've ever worked, pretty
Yep.
much. So I really appreciate the way that like one of the most enduring long running jokes in that show is that every time somebody calls IT in this company, the first thing they say is, "Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Is it plugged in?" And it's just
Yes.
like it's so funny because it's so real. It's just so real.
Uh,
Um
the amount of times that I have had to use that exact phrasing at my escape room job that I
exactly.
had was
Exactly.
alarming.
Exactly. And yeah, so that is a show that I love. Um, that show doesn't have as much through line, um, but I don't know. I tend to be okay with that with shorter shows, I guess. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, so there's my international corner.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna jump into a couple of the shows. So, like I said at the beginning of the episode, didn't really watch a whole lot of TV, and I think Himium was the one that like really touched the episodic sense of things because the rest of the ones on my excuse me the non episodic because I mean there were some things that were episodic on it, but for the most part it had like a steady through line. Um, I wanted to talk about Reba.
Yes.
Because this was a show that I 300% did not think I was
Oh
gonna
yeah,
like
yeah.
enjoy, but it was like I was like I don't even remember what my circumstance was, and I have not watched terrible amounts of the show, which ran from '01 to '06. Um, I'm sure it's like in syndication here and there in some corner of America, but it was and like the like two other this and two other shows on my list were like fictionalized versions of actual people. So Reba basically played a character whose name was also Reba, and she got a divorce from her, I want to say like dentist husband. Um, and who like was cheating on her with like his dental hygienist who was
Yeah,
called
I
Barbara
think that's right.
Jean, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, they called her BJ, of course, because you know her. And the funny part about it was is that BJ was like in love with Reba from like a platonic sense. So like Reba was like hated this woman that like obviously quote unquote
Mm-hmm.
stole her man, but like Barbara Jean was just like too not she wasn't ditzy in like that sense, I guess, but she was kind of played as like a dumb, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, dumb character. But she had like this like sadness of being like, hey, no, like you're nice to me, but also like you're really my only friend, even though I stole your husband. And it was like, oh, kind of cute. Um, Dealt with some real issues because obviously Barbara Jean comes down to be pregnant, which is why um, Reba's husband leaves for the most part and just doesn't just like be like, oops, I cheated. And then also Reba's daughter, which I don't remember if they say is from that particular relationship or a different one, um, is also ends up being pregnant. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
teen pregnancy happens
Mm-hmm.
during the show. But it was a show that I was just like, it's on. I don't really have anything else to watch. And I was like, oh, this show's actually kind of good. And Melissa Peterman, who plays BJ, was my favorite character on that
She's
show.
so ridiculous.
She's fucking hilarious. She's so goddamn funny. Just so goddamn funny.
Yes.
Good job, Melissa. So there is that. That was one, and then I'll just kind of touch on the other two because I can kind of just quick knock them out. George Lopez was a show that for whatever reason me and my brother really loved watching. I'm kind of hot and cold on George Lopez as a comedian. Like sometimes I think things that he says are funny, but sometimes I'm just like, probably problematic. Not really actually funny. Actually kind of toxic. Okay. Just here and there. Like I'm not going to make a commentary on him as a person, but sometimes his comedy is like hot and cold for me. But he was also playing a fictionalized version of himself. And he worked at a factory, which I want to say it was like a car factory or something like that, which I was like a little weirded out by. But yeah, so me and my brother watched it a ton, and it's way more episodic. There were kind of a couple of through lines here and there, but it has fucking Constance Marie, who is one of the greatest actresses I've ever watched, and I know that she's in Switched at Birth, which we maybe we'll touch on later on in life, but basically watched that show for her because not only is she very, very funny and talented, but she's also quite beautiful. So there's that. I'm trying to think about what else I can say about that show. I don't know. If you could already figure out, I gravitated towards shows that had a strong female presence, strong like people of color presence. So that's where these two come into. And then the last two that I'll quick touch are My Wife and Kids, which was basically just like, hey, this is a black sitcom for black people. Because Damon Wayans was on it, of the Wayans brothers, and Tisha Campbell Martin, formerly of Martin, which was a 90s sitcom. So there's our 90s reference for the day, /month/year. Played his wife, and they also did a lot of like kind of through lines and things like that. There is also like a pregnancy when people aren't ready to be pregnant kind of thing going on in that show. But basically, honestly, other than Damon's son being like the dumb character on the show, there wasn't too much that stood out from it other than it just being a very good black black people comedy. And of course, Everybody Hates Chris, which had Tichina Arnold, who is amazing, as well as Terry Crews. And it was supposed to be about Chris Rock as a kid, but like the timeline was fucked up for some reason. Because I think it was set in like the mid 80s, but Chris Rock would have been, I want to say he was born in like the 60s, so he wouldn't have been a teenager around then. Let me look this up real quick.
I know Chris Rock was like in his 20s in the 90s.
Yeah, so he was born in 65. So he would have been a teenager from like 78 to 84. But the show is set from 1982 to 1987. So
it's
like
a very like fictionalized version of his childhood. Sherrick? Did I lose you? Fuck.
What happens when Sherrick and Amelia have too many opinions?
Yeah. Anchor is like, fuck you.
Basically. I was just like, as I was talking, I was like, I should get through all of my list because we have no time to go through the amazing shows on you. That's why I was kind of just like ramping it up. I was just like, let me just get through these so we can just talk about like 30 Rock and Scrubs and Undeclared and Office, because I want to know your opinions on all of these. So
yes. But getting back to it, this is what I wanted to say about your list, is that what I noticed was, as you said, predominantly shows about people of color, which makes total sense to me. And is something that I think about a lot, is like how there's sort of this divide even in like what we watch. there have for a long time been shows um, with people of color in them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's interesting how, like, the industry, both film and television, get talked about how a lot of it is very white. And that's so true. That's absolutely true. Um, but even when it isn't, it's like white people watch white shows and black people watch black shows, or like people of color watch people of color. And I just think that's so interesting. I mean, it makes total sense,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you gravitate towards what you know, um, but
And
it,
what you can relate to,
and what you
yeah.
can relate to. I don't know. So I don't really have like a thesis or a theory on this or anything. Um, I just think it's interesting, and it's just something I think about a lot as I like pick out things to watch. Um, I try to like think about it a little more, I guess. But
Okay.
um, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, and the one thing that I was going to point out before we got fucking booted by Anchor, we love you still though, was that like Everybody Hates Chris was like probably the show that I was the best familiar with
Mhm.
outside of How I Met Your Mother, just because I mean, it tackled so many issues in such a like Chris Rock for his faults. Is a very smart man. He's a very smart comedian,
Mhm.
and it showed through more so than it would have like on George Lopez or on Reba, because like
Mhm.
those guys were just like they were having fun.
Right.
Those people were having fun doing their shows and being that, but like I feel
Mhm.
like Chris Rock thought a little bit more about like what was
Mhm.
going on in his show,
Mhm.
and he added that humorous and thought provoking style that is like
Yeah. That makes
part of
sense.
his comedy into the show.
Mhm.
And it does defy like it. I don't know, without sounding like I'm fucking just like a shill for Chris Rock. It's like it was very thought provoking, and
Mhm.
I know that like it was nominated or at least named as like one of the best shows by like AOL at the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
So and it's also a show that was on Teen Nick for a time, which I thought was kind of wild.
Oh.
Um, but yeah,
Wow.
it was like syndication for syndication only, but still like
Mhm.
Everybody Hates Chris is great. It's way more episodic than any of the shows that are I think on my list, because it's literally just like here's the
Yeah.
episode about like Kwanzaa, or here's the episode about the time that Chris Rock got a wedgie in school. Like it's really
Mhm.
just like
Mhm.
that, but it's still it does it in a very very good way. So
Mhm. Yeah.
that's pretty much my list.
Yeah. I also noticed too that like other than How I Met Your Mother, the shows on your list are very like family
Yes.
sitcom-esque,
Hmm.
which is a very, that's a very common sitcom uh, trope, I guess, or
Yeah, I can't
setup.
explain why I gravitated to those though.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've watched a lot of those, especially like as a kid. And I still have here and there. Um, but I think as I as I sort of like grew up and started picking what I watched on my own as opposed to watching what my parents watched,
Hmm.
um, it met at the same time with this sort of like mockumentary style of sitcom that came out in the mid 2000s. So yeah, so like The Office, um, Arrested Development, Parks and Rec. I didn't put that on my list because that started in 2009. But this idea of doing a like single camera mockumentary style show that was
Hmm.
very popular at this time, and still continues on. Uh, I think I don't know. It's such an interesting uh, way to do a television show, and I think The Office, while um, not being groundbreaking in and of itself, I think really paved the way for that, even though like Arrested Development was very much like that. Even though it wasn't quite documentary style, it was very similar to that.
Okay.
Um, that yeah, I think The Office really made it mainstream, and far
I
surpassed the UK version of
mm,
The Office, at least in terms of volume. I
yeah,
I
and
cannot speak to quality.
I've never watched an episode of The Office. I know that it was like there will people be like bursting down my door with like torches and pitchforks over that news.
Hmm.
But like I there are parts of The Office that I have watched and enjoyed. Like I've watched a bit of all of Jim's like pranks on Dwight,
Oh,
and I'm
uh-huh.
like, this is actually like that is big funny. And again,
Hmm.
spoilers incoming because like
Oh,
the
yeah.
bit where fucking he hires his Asian friend to play him.
Yeah, Asian Jim.
So good. Like down to like the kiss and everything. The
Yep.
Dwight is just like, what the
Yeah. Yeah.
hilarious.
So good. I have this like, oh my God, I've had this idea for a long time that I really want to have like a staff meeting, a series of staff meetings where we watch an episode of The Office, and then
Mhm.
I at the end of the episode I go, okay, so from an HR perspective, what did they do wrong? Oh, because the show is just so crazy, but like so um real. And I think
Mhm.
what's real about it and what makes that documentary style work so well is that they do allow it to breathe a little bit. They allow time for those awkward moments to happen.
Mhm.
So it's not as glossed over or polished as like a three camera sitcom is often. Um, and so a lot of the humor comes from like people saying stupid stuff, putting their foot in their mouth, just the inane uh day-to-day work life. And yeah. And of course has, one of the best ships of all time, Jim and Pam, which I could at least talk about for hours, but I won't, because there are plenty of places where
we
you can go to hear more about that. Let's see what else is on my list. So, Scrubs is a good one because it spans the entirety of this period that we set up, 2001 to
Mhm.
2010. And yes, it moved networks, and I've never seen the last season. But uh, it still had a lot of really good moments. It brought Donald Faison back into our lives, who
Yeah.
we 90s kids had known, and gave Zach Braff a career, um, and other people. There are plenty of complaints that people have made about Scrubs, but I always found it pretty humorous. And um, yeah, it was, I think, workplace comedy is what really dominated um, the sitcoms of the 2000s. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, then I'm looking at this: The Office, Scrubs, 30 Rock, IT Crowd. Um, yeah. And then uh, one show I wanted to mention that I think is super underrated is Undeclared. So, Undeclared was a one season show.
Okay.
It came from the people that brought you Freaks and Geeks. Uh,
Also never watched.
yeah, but that is a cult classic, and I like Freaks and Geeks. I do. I don't love it as much as like the the internet does,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word. Um, that talks about how like it's one of the uh, greatest shows to ever only get one season and stuff. Um, but so that show was set in high school and was like more of an hour long drama, um, dramedy, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
Undeclared was what Judd Apatow did next. And it was a half an hour show about kids in college.
Okay.
And so it's called
Makes
Undeclared
sense.
because it was like freshmen. So it was like, you know, they had undeclared majors.
Right.
And it is not polished. It is not super amazing by any stretch, but you can see where those early Judd Apatow movies kind of came from. This was like
Mm-hmm.
that beginning of that sort of era of film after this show, and it kept Jason Segel in our lives long enough to then put him in How I Met Your Mother, because he was also in Freaks and Geeks, as was Seth Rogen. He was also in Freaks and Geeks and Undeclared. So like it's keeping these people that will become a much bigger deal kind of on the air. And it was just goofy and it was just cute and funny and about college and um, yeah, I don't know. I've always liked it, but it's nothing really amazing or special. But I do think it's way underrated, and probably could have gotten more seasons. As TV has become more niche, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't care about millions and millions and millions of people watching them. That it's interesting how things that wouldn't have survived 10, 20 years ago are now like huge quote unquote hits.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of,
yeah.
can we quick just detour?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a new service called Quibi that I have heard about a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like episodes in 10 minutes or less. So it's like, hey, you don't got a lot of time, but you want to watch this thing. So check it out. It's fucking 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Get in there. And like Chrissy Teigen's on board. They've shown Idris Elba as a fucking race car driver. And like, have you heard about this at
I've
all?
heard about Quibi, yeah, and I've heard about
Okay.
um Judge Chrissy or Christie's Court or whatever it's called.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
Chrissy's
yeah.
Court is what it's called. Which, as a side note, is to me, I'm like, I tweeted about this at A Black Sparrow, and I was like, I'm not trying to hate because Chrissy Teigen should get whatever she wants to get. Go get your money, boo boo. But there's a podcast called Judge John Hodgman, and I was like,
Mm.
this sounds a lot like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically them just being like, we're gonna take that idea, which the adage of there being no original ideas left,
Right.
it is what it is. But
Right.
I was just like, I mean, I hope she gets her money and all that good stuff. But to me,
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
I don't even know if Judge John Hodgman is still running or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't either.
But it was very, very similar in that like
Mm-hmm.
people would call in and be like, my dad won't stop bringing home raccoons. And the dad would state his case. And then it's like,
Yeah.
essentially just like the people's court, but just like for ridiculous shit like that.
Right.
Or like,
Yeah.
my husband cuts his hair with a Flowbee. Someone please make him stop.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say like is that idea stolen? Did they talk to him? Do they like is
Do they
that
not
is
care?
that
Like
enough of
what?
a like original idea that it could be stolen? Like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
layers of that, and I think it's really funny. And I think it's really funny how you said like there's that idea that there are no original ideas left, because one of my favorite, and this is about two sitcoms, not necessarily from just the 2000s, they're longer running than that, but there's an episode of South Park where they say that everything has been done before, and everything
Yep.
has been done before on The Simpsons.
Simpsons. Yeah. Simpsons did it.
Yep, Simpsons did it. And that is still, to me, one of the most brilliant half an hour of television I've ever seen because it is so fucking true.
Yeah. Yep.
So, anyway.
But yeah, any other shows on your list that you still want to talk about, or have we kind of hit up what we needed to hit up?
I mean, I've sort of hit them all a little bit. Is there anything that you
Mm-hmm.
want me to go into more detail about?
honestly, off mic, I want to know more about Arrested Development because that's a show that like I've maybe watched little bits here and there of,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't really like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if y'all want to hear us talk about it, talk about this in more detail. Let us know. You know how to get at us. It
Right.
is twitter.com/ASWAYD for Amelia Sherrick. What are you doing? You can also email us, and I think that one is ASWAYD. Is it pod? Yeah,
Yes.
pod@gmail.com. So it's ASWAYDPOD@gmail.com. You can email us there if you are not comfortable with using the Twitter. You can let us know separately, either at A Black Sparrow from me or Shake Meets World for Amelia. Let us know if there's one that
Yeah.
we missed or you want us to talk more about, or if you want us to go into greater detail about, you know how to let us know. I just told
Mm-hmm.
you. So there.
Yeah. So yeah, as much as I talked about how like I like sitcoms that have through lines and um uh, that have like real storylines to them, I also like really weird shit. So like 30 Rock is full of just really weird shit. And so is Scrubs, and so is Arrested Development. Um, and for that matter, the IT crowd is actually full of weird shit because there's a guy that like lives in the closet down in the basement of the IT office. So
And also 30 Rock has a fictionalized version of Tracy Morgan. So
is it fictionalized though?
I mean it is technically because his name isn't Tracy Morgan, but
Yes.
other than that, it is basically not.
Yeah. From everything I've heard, they basically just like let him be himself.
Which is a master stroke, I
Yes.
think.
Yes. So, um, yeah. So, yeah, I love TV. I love sitcoms. Here, this was my list of favorite sitcoms from the 2000s, which was really hard for me to limit, clearly, since I had 8 instead of 5. But, yeah, I could talk about TV literally all day. And have. But, yeah, we'll leave it at that for now.
Yep. And we'll move to everybody's favorite segment on Amelia Shark. What are you doing? And that is, Amelia, what the fuck is this?
Oh,
I
yes.
forgot what my cool lead in for it was.
Eh,
This one's going to be less of a like, what the fuck, and more of like a, this made me laugh and I thought it would make you laugh.
okay.
So, and it's kind of pertinent. So go ahead and click that link whenever you're
Ooh,
ready.
okay. Okay, so am I supposed to know who Tom Nook is?
Tom Nook is from Animal Crossing, which
Oh,
is why I said it was pertinent.
okay, got it, got it. So it's this bear, raccoon.
Technically, he's a tanuki, but raccoon works just fine.
Okay, because like the ears threw me off, but the like
Yeah,
facial coloring is what made me think
yeah.
raccoon.
So,
Okay.
fun fact for you: a tanuki is it's a Japanese word, semi obviously,
Mhm.
but it is it's like a cross between a raccoon and a dog.
Okay. Got it.
So like people, so I was joking when I say it's raccoon is fine because I'm sure purists are gonna come at my door and be like, he's a fucking tanuki, how dare you? But like, yes, we get
Gotcha.
it.
Yes.
So
So it
yes,
is a picture of him in a sweater vest and tie at a desk with a computer, and it says Tom Nook watching me pay off a 30-year $500,000 mortgage in one night after selling bugs and seashells to his kids. What the fuck?
those who play Animal Crossing will get that and think it is quite hilarious. But just to explain, I thought you would find the humor in it anyway. But
Yes.
basically, there's an in joke in the Animal Crossing community that Tom Nook is awful when obviously he is not, because he builds your house in less than a night. Like you will play the game and like by the next morning your house upgrade or whatever will be done,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll go, okay, well here's how much you owe me for it, but you can pay it off literally whenever, and there is no interest.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Man, wouldn't that
But
be
like,
nice?
right, but like he has, I believe they're technically his nephews, but can't remember if his nephews or his kids. He has Timmy and Tommy Nook who run the shop on the island, or store, and if you're playing New Leaf or whatever, and so you can sell them like the seashells, the bugs, the fish, like any of the treasure that you find.
Mm-hmm.
You can sell them to him to help you pay off your loan.
Okay.
So like a lot of people have just been like hoarding all of this stuff so that they can sell it to his nephews and then they can pay off their loans.
Gotcha.
So just funny because like the loans, without spoiling anything for the Animal Crossing crowd, they get pretty high. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, what I really enjoy about this is this character's the look on his face is great. Also that it's an Animal Crossing meme that says "what the fuck," because it's like such a good like combination of this segment and the love of your current time. So yeah, I like it. It's funny.
So there you go. There's your Amelia, what the fuck is this? Because I was like, you might not. I might have to explain who Tom Nook is, etc. But it is still funny to me.
It is still funny.
And I had a different one in place like right before, and I was like, nah, this is better.
Yeah.
We'll use that one for next time.
I like it.
All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of Amelia and Sherrick. What are you doing? I just gave you our handles, but in case you missed it, I am at A Black Sparrow and Amelia is at Shake Beats World. You can reach the podcast at ASWAYD on the Twitter. And you can email us at aswaydpod@gmail.com.
We are also aswaydpod on Twitter.
Oh, sorry.
I know we keep getting them.
I could have sworn.
I could have sworn one of them was different, but they're not. They're both
okay.
Well, ASWAYD pod. So
I am a fool. Don't listen to me. Listen to Amelia. She's the smart one.
No, I got it wrong at 1.2, so it's fine.
So there's that. Please give us a review. That'd be super chill and cool and awesome of you. If you don't really feel like doing a review, you could definitely tell people to come check us out. That'd be super chill and rad of you. Mm-hmm. You could also tweet at us what you thought, how wrong we were about our opinions on TV shows. That's totally fine too. So do all that stuff.
Yeah. So with that, I've been Amelia.
I've been Sherrick, and I don't have a funny thing to say. I was like, had it.
I like that one.
I had it, and I don't. Nope, it's gone. Brush your teeth, wash your hands. We love you. Bye.
Yes, everybody, stay safe out there. Bye.
Bye.